Welcome to Simmons Says, where I help emerging and struggling writers create intriguing plots and compelling characters to make their stories hard to put down and even harder to forget. What do you do with a story that just isn't working out? Do you start over again? I mean, from the top? Do you jump to a different idea, a totally different idea that won't have any problems? Or do you quit? Hi, I'm Alex Simmons, and for those of you who've been following me, you know that. And welcome to another episode of Simmons Says, where we figure out what happens next in your stories. And in this episode, we're going to explore why your story doesn't work, even when it's a great idea. Now, let me start with what I'm going to call conventional wisdom or methodology. The common sort of sense factor is if your story's not working, maybe there's one of three things that's not quite dialed in. One might be you don't have a clear story structure, beginning, middle, and end, and certain things that happen within each of those sections, act one, act two, act three. So you could explore that. Conflict. What is your character up against? I mean, yeah, if you're doing an action film, it's this person versus that person, or this force versus that force. If you're doing a drama or a romance or a comedy, it might be a little bit trickier, but still, what is your character up against? What is in the way of them getting what they want? So, what's the conflict? Maybe you haven't clarified that enough. Or maybe it's character development. How far along have you developed the personality, the traits, the habits, the speech pattern of your character, right? And then there's other levels of that development. So have you dug into that? So you could explore those three things and make some adjustments. And then hopefully, your problem solved. You're rolling right along. But what if you're not? Okay, so now what do? You hit the big three. Well, there are other factors to consider, and these are some of the ones that I look at for myself. I've heard other writers that I respect and follow. They also have dug around in this, and this is what I also share with my students and my clients. So let's start with your intention. I mean, why did you choose to tell this story? What's the purpose? Are you trying to teach a lesson? Are you trying to explore a theme? Is it a story that you just want to utilize to entertain people and distract us from all the crazy things that are going on around us? Or have you locked on to the latest trend? And these films are being done right now. They're selling like hotcakes, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do one of those. I think you can get sort of an idea why not being clear on your intention could create some problems. Being clear on your intentions, okay, fine. If you want to explore a particular thing, maybe it's gotten a little complex and you're a little bit lost right now. If you want to teach a lesson, well, what's that lesson? Remind yourself of what it was you wanted to have us understand and benefit from. If it's for pure entertainment, hey, are you having a good time? Is it a thriller or a mystery or a horror film? And are you staying within those genre lines and making sure things connect and click? Okay, if it's a trend, it's a little trickier because maybe it's a trend that you don't live. You don't even swing in that particular direction. That's not a world that you spin around in. And yet you're trying to lock onto that because it's an opportunity. Well, then that's a problem. And you've got to look at that. If that's not something that I've experienced, if that's not something I'm connected to in any which way, what do I do about that? How do I become more at home with that trend, with that world, so that I can relay it more convincingly and enthusiastically and easily in my story? So you can look at your intention. Why did you choose to do this story? Another one, commitment. How much time are you putting into working on the story? Are you just sort of going at it every now and then? When I got a few minutes, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to knock out a couple of lines, paragraphs, or whatever. Right? Is it your idea? If it's not, how committed are you to getting this done? You've taken on an assignment. You've promised to help somebody else write such and such, but it's not your thing. So are you putting yourself in? Are you really committing to getting the work done, to doing the homework and whatever else is necessary? Is it a lack of commitment that's holding you back? Okay. Those are things that you want to think about. And then you've got to explore, how do I become okay professionally or at least ethically? How do I become okay with working on this thing and giving it the proper amount of time to get the job done, to spend some time getting into the head that's necessary so that I can do this story? So that's another thing you can look at: intention and commitment. Right. Third one, your work habits. When do you write? How often do you write? What kind of setting do you sit around in or do you need in order to get into that head? Perhaps if you need, a lot of noise around you, ambient noise, white noise, whatever it is, so you want to work in a cafe and whatever, but you've been trying to work at home, it's not working for you. You're not getting out enough, that's not working for you. Something's not stimulating you, that's not working for you. Or, once again, like with commitment, you haven't given yourself every day a certain amount of time, whether it's 20 minutes or 2 hours, to sit down and write. Every day, a certain amount of time to write, even if it sucks. All right. So figure out how much time you want to commit every day. Build that habit. How often? Build that habit. What kind of settings do you need? Do you like to bounce around? I personally sometimes like to work in my space at my old roll top desk and enjoy that environment and that world. And sometimes I want to sit in a cafe or a noisy diner someplace or a park and let all of that atmosphere be around me and it wrap itself around me while I'm into this world that I am developing and these characters that I'm developing. Something about that other space, that new space, that noisy space feeds me. And so sometimes my habit is make sure I'm in a location that feeds me so that I can get the writing done. Another consideration, how do you start? Do you do any kind of warm-up exercises beforehand? Or do you jump right into it? Or here's a popular one: the day before, where you stopped, did you stop deliberately in the middle of a sentence or in the middle of a paragraph that you already have an idea of where it's going to go? So that when you come back to it the next day, you don't have to think of, okay, what am I going to do today? You look at it, you go, finish this because I know what's happening here. And that gives you that sort of running start into the writing. Intention, commitment, habits, conflict, structure. These are all things that are like tools on a tool belt or elements of constructing a world. These are things you have to work with. These are things you can consider when you get stuck, when you're having a problem, when your story is not quite working. It's not one thing. You have different things you can look at in order to help you keep moving forward. Number of writers that, I mean, because it's a world, we're all writers and we're all creatives. And sometimes a painter or a sculptor gets sort of stuck, or the piece of art that they're working on just isn't coming together. And they got to try and wrestle through it, or they got to try and figure out what's holding me up, what's in the way. Some of these people look at, a lack of process. Even talented individuals fail when they focus purely on one thing. If they focus purely on, okay, I got to make sure that my formatting is perfect. No, you got to get the story out first. I got to make sure that my dialogue is on point, everything. No, get it all down first. Get it out of you first, and then go back and begin to refine, right? Sometimes it's ignoring feedback. Maybe you've let some people read it and they've given you some feedback. And well, they don't know what they're talking about because I know this world, I know these characters, I know this, I know that, but you're still struggling. It's because maybe there's some part of you that's sort of married to a particular character trait or action or dialogue or a plot point. You're obsessed with it. You can't see it any other way. And you got notes that might help you clear that up, but you don't listen to them because you're sort of myopic. You're focused. You're hyper focused on this. You can't see it in a different from a different point of view. And that can get in the way. So sometimes thinking about the feedback really consider it, really be open to it. Okay, if I try this, what would happen? Again, we're creating something out of nothing, right? It's not like we've got blueprints and molds for this that we just pour stuff in and it takes its own form and it becomes the thing. We're actually molding this ourselves. Each one, each story is different in many ways, not one way, many ways. Even if you're working with the same characters, if you're doing a TV series, every script is going to come with its own unique challenges or problems or discoveries. So don't feel like it's got to only be this. You've got to be a little bit more flexible. Let me try a couple of quotes, right? George Lucas says the screenplay is what you've dreamed up, right? And this is what it should be. This is what you've imagined in your head and you've written it down. But the film is what you end up with. And that's for two reasons. One, once you've gotten it out of your head and down on a page or on the screen, however you've worked it, but you've written it. Once it's written, and you put it into the hands of others, the director, the actors, the cinematographers, everything, it's now becoming something more. In a perfect world, it's everybody's brought their A game and it's becoming even more than you would have imagined. And some of that vision is going to change. Right? So sometimes you got to allow yourself to go through it and to make sure you get it all down and get your vision as clearly as possible. Give yourself the flexibility of change and options and different point of views and just work it, work it, work it, work it until it's the best you can make it and then let it go. So give yourself permission to go through that first. So that's George Lucas. Then we got Malcolm Gladwell, who is an author of nonfiction. I've seen him in the master class. I've taken a couple of his courses there, and I've seen him speak in several places. But he writes a lot of nonfiction. And he says, I deal with writer's block by lowering my expectations. I think the trouble starts when you sit down to write and imagine that you will achieve something magical and magnificent. And when you don't, panic sets in. So sometimes we sit down and we think this is going to be the most brilliant thing ever, and it's got to be, it's got to be, it's got to be. And when we don't feel like the pages are happening that way, the dialogue, the characters, the story isn't flowing out to be magnificent and brilliant as we're writing it, we then start to fear that maybe I can't do this. Maybe the idea sucks. Maybe I've been fooling myself. But what you do is you sit down with the idea of writing the story, right? To achieve getting the story out of your head and onto a surface so that you can begin to work with it and nurture it into what it can be, the best it can be. But if you're writing initially with that concept of it's going to be brilliant and magical, that's a lot of pressure to put on you when you are literally forming this as you go. I'll give you one more quote. Let's see here, because I wrote these down so I could refer to them. Ryan Holiday is a best-selling author and a media strategist and everything. So, I'm not just pulling from fiction writers or screenwriters, right? Ryan Holiday, he says, beat it into submission. Okay, beat your story into submission. That's the only way. How would you get rid of runner's block? You go out and run, you run. And friggin's not the word he said. Okay, out of quote for that moment, right? If you're if you're having trouble running, you run. If you're having trouble working out, you go work out. If you're having trouble writing, you write. And maybe you need to write about something nonsensical or having nothing to do with your story to get your muscles going, and then you write. And if your story, and going back to the original question, how do you work with a story that isn't working, even though it's a great idea, is you allow yourself the time to work through it, and you allow yourself different approaches to getting through it. And like I said, we go back to, is it the structure? Is it the conflict? Is it the character? And if it's not any of those things, then is it your intention? Why did you choose to write this story? Think about that. Find your North Star again on that. Is it your commitment? Are you sort of going in and out of it, writing on it whenever you kind of feel like it? Or are you saying every day I have to put in a certain amount of time? And if you're making a commitment to it, then how do your habits affect that? Are you saying that every day I will write for 20 minutes, a half hour, an hour, 2 hours to get the story done by a certain time period, a certain date? Do you have that habit in there? So there's different things that you can ask yourself in dealing with why your story isn't working, but it is your job to figure out why it isn't working. Not just say, it's not working, I'll go to something new that won't have any problems, because it will have problems. Every new idea will come with its own set of problems. And the one problem that will be consistent throughout all of those different ideas will be that you're not developing the muscle to work your stories out, to work through the problem. So identify the problem and work through it. And that will help you anytime your story isn't quite going where you feel it should be going. Okay, I hope you found that useful. And if you didn't, what? No, I'm sure you did. And I really hope you apply it. Okay, until next time, on Simmons Says, keep writing and keep discovering what happens next in your story.